Hi friends and neighbors, this is Michelle again with another foraging video. I'm at Sutter's Landing along the American River Parkway just north of Midtown, and I'd like to share with you some of the things that are available this time of year, which would be fall. It is middle of October, so let's go see what we can find. Here I found a fun plant friend. This here is equisetum or horsetail. Fun fact about these is they're a really ancient plant family. They've been around for millions of years. In the time of the dinosaurs, they grew to be like as big as trees. But yeah, they look kind of like, they're reminiscent of like a small bamboo, and you can kind of pop them off. A lot of people sometimes grow them as ornamentals. You can kind of just see them around. They're hollow. They have these hollow stems, so you can like make a little flute out of them, which is really fun. I've used them medicinally, like I guess they used to be used like to brush teeth because they're kind of rough on the outside. And you can also use them, I guess they're really good for the skin, so I've put them like in bath water, and they're really good for skin ailments. I've just found a very, very special tree that is a really important part of the ecosystem out here, part of the natural history out here, and that is the elderberry tree. So an elderberry can grow to be more tree-like or more like a large bush. It has compound leaves, so here's what the leaves look like. So it'll have like one center stem and 2, 4, 6, 7 smaller leaves coming off of it, simple leaves coming off of it. And it makes these berries. This is the time of year that you can be picking the berries. They're small, they're dark colored, and these are medicinal. They're really good for the immune system. What you can do is you can dry them and make them into a tea, or you can boil them with some water for a good while until it gets kind of thick, strain out the gunk, and then add some honey and keep it in the fridge, and you have elderberry syrup. You can take it whenever you're starting to feel sick, and it just gives a real good boost to the immune system. You could take it all winter long, and it's really good. The elderberry, the flowers also, which happen sooner than this, but when they're flowering, you can also use the flowers medicinally in the same way. Do not eat the berries raw. They actually are not good to eat raw. They have to be cooked. So just make sure that you end up putting them in a tea or cooking them down into a syrup if you're going to use them. Also a note that these trees are home to an endangered insect, the elderberry beetle. So we are not allowed to actually take branches or stems or leaves off of these trees. It is fine to pick the berries, but it's an important habitat for this insect, so we have to be cognizant of that when we're foraging for these. Also, only the berries and the flowers can be eaten. Like the small stems that the berries come off of are fine, but the other stems are actually toxic, so you don't want those in your body. Another important, just kind of fun use for this is these were called the music tree by the Nisenan, who originally lived here. This is the land that we're on, is Nisenan land. And they would train them to grow in these straight stalks, and they have hollowed out stems, and they could like make these stems into flutes. So they're pretty. They've just been they're a very special tree to this area. I just found some of the dried stalks of something that is really common around here. This isn't really the time of year to be finding it because it's mostly shriveling up, so you'd kind of want to wait more till spring for this. But since we didn't talk about it in the spring video, I wanted to mention fennel. So fennel is invasive. It really just kind of takes over everywhere. You can often smell it, even like just while you're walking up to an area where it's growing. It has a very licorice-y smell. So I have this plant, I found this plant right here. It's, most of the stalks are dried, but you can still see there's some green ones. So it has this very smooth green stalk. When you touch it or like break it, or like when it does have leaves, it has leaves that kind of are similar to dill leaves, very like thin and wispy. But yeah, it has a very fennel-y smell, and right now even the seeds have all kind of dropped off. But the fennel seeds, you may have seen fennel seeds as an herb, and yeah, so they look like fennel, or if you're familiar with caraway seeds or dill seeds or cumin seeds, they all kind of have a similar look where they're like small and long and brown, sometimes a little bit striped. So anyway, you can eat the seeds. They're good in teas. They're really good for women. They're also just yummy, and they can be used in cooking. And then you can also eat the greens. You could stick them in a salad, or you can juice them. A lot of people eat the root. I don't know about how good these wild ones are, how good their roots are, but in the store often you can find fennel root, and then you can like shave it thin and put it in a salad. So it's a pretty yummy thing, even though it's not necessarily that great for our ecosystem. I just found another fennel that does still have some leaves on it, so I just wanted to show you the leaves. They're just like small and delicate little green leaves. So they taste good. They're very, they're strong. It's a licoricey flavor, so I'm gonna give some to my kiddo right here. I'm standing now in front of a young oak tree. Unfortunately, I haven't found any acorns, but I do want to point out that this is the time of year to be collecting the acorns that are dropping from the oak trees. We have a few different kinds of oak trees. The most common ones you'll see will be valley oak or blue oak, or live oak. You can tell the valley and the blue oak both have these different, I have some weeds, some thorny stuff, so I can't really get too close to it, but they have these lobed leaves, meaning they kind of go in and out. The valley oak, the live oak are a little different. Their leaves are more serrated, they're darker. They also keep their leaves year round, while the other ones, they drop their leaves. Acorns are really important here. Oak trees are really important in the area. I don't know if it was just too dry this year. It's not a great year for them, or maybe the squirrels have just been finding all the ones before I could get to them. But acorns are really nutritious. They do have to be processed in a really special way, but they used to be collected by the Nisenan when they lived all along out here. They would have these big granaries filled with acorns, and you crack them open, you grind them up. You have to leach out. They have a lot of tannins, so they're really not good for your digestion to just eat raw. So you have to run water through them until the water runs clear, and that gets rid of the tannins. And then you have this nice flour, this nice meal that you can make bread and pancakes and whatever different things. You can just mix it into bread you already have, and it's actually quite tasty. A quick note here on a commonly used medicinal plant that now we make a commercial medicine out of is willow. So willow is a really big family. There's various different kinds of trees, but they grow all along the river. We have a handful of different kinds that grow along the river. They can be tree-like, or they can be bush-like. So this one's, more like a bush here, and you can tell a willow by its long, narrow leaves with simple edges. Their edges don't have any lobes, or they're not serrated or anything. You can also identify willows by their specific type of flower. None of them are flowering right now. That happens in the spring. But just another thing to look for IDing them is this kind of flower. It's called a catkin, where it has this like long kind of, it dangles down, droops down, and has like lots of smaller flowers coming off of it. So they can be like this long, or they could be longer. It depends on the species of willow. Just another way to identify them. Willow medicine is now actually used commercially, in that aspirin actually comes from the bark of willow trees. So me personally, I've never done anything with a willow to turn it into a painkiller, but a quick note that is the origin of it. So these are medicinal plants. Also, I do not know what particular species has been it has been used to cultivate aspirin traditionally, but just a fun fact. This is actually a few days later from my last recordings, but I wanted to show you one more thing that is a great thing to find in the fall. I'm at Hagen Community Park right now, behind Hagen Park right by the river, and I'm sitting in a large black walnut tree. So black walnuts can also be found all along the river. I didn't see any at Sutter's Landing that day, but I want to make sure you know how to find them. So this time of year is when you can actually pick the walnuts. You'll find them, they dry off and they drop to the ground. This nut needs to be cracked. If you're out at the river and you want to just play with like cracking them open with a stone, sometimes you break the nut inside a little bit, but that you can just put it on a stone and then get another one that's like about fist sized and smash it. Or collect some and take them home and use a legit nutcracker. So the black walnut trees, I'll show you, there's a little bit of a volunteer growing next to this one, so I'm just going to show you what the leaves look like. So they have pretty large compound leaves. They're pretty long, as you can see. And so that's one way to find them, is by these pretty big compound leaves, and then the leaves, the like leaflets coming off of the compound leaf are kind of skinnier and long. And the bark is pretty rough. They can get to be quite big, so this one is huge. But of course, like, there are younger ones that will not be as big. So keep an eye out for the black walnuts. The walnuts are tasty, and they just, this time of year, they're just all shriveled and have dropped to the ground. You'll see them, another fun way to identify the tree earlier in the year, like early summer, late spring, is you can see the walnuts still on the tree and they're green. And this time of year, yeah, there's still some on there too now, and they're all brown now, but on the tree you can also look for the nuts themselves to try and identify it. Another thing I've been noticing out here is a bunch of grapevines, which we did talk about in the last video. Unfortunately, I didn't actually see any grapes here. I don't know if it's been too dry this year, but there haven't really been any grapes, but this is the time of year to be looking for like purple grapes. They are very seedy, but they do taste good. They are sweet. I also have been seeing rose hips on the rose bushes. I didn't see any down here, but they're bright red. They're really high in vitamin C. We also talked about that in the last video. I'm wondering if the ones here, maybe it's too shady, because none of them had them on them. Did just find some blackberry bushes. They grow all along the river. Be careful around them. They are kind of thorny. This time of year you can sometimes find like still on them like shriveled up, like basically blackberry raisins, which can be very sweet. Some of them are just kind of like dried by the sun and turned to a crisp, but then others are like kind of chewy and really nice. So still keep an eye out on the blackberries even this time of year. You can find, I think I just found one they're small and shriveled, but they can taste pretty sweet still.